I'm Chloe, 31 years old, working in user experience design in Seattle. After 3 years of dating, I got engaged to Brandon Whitmore, a man from one of the oldest and wealthiest families in Charleston, South Carolina. His family owns a chain of luxury resorts along the East Coast, and me, I grew up in a two-bedroom apartment with a single mother who worked three part-time jobs to put me through college. The difference between his world and mine was never something I ignored. But I didn't expect it to arrive neatly packaged in a thick envelope, hand-delivered to my doorstep on a Friday morning. The envelope was ivory, embossed with gold trim, the paper as stiff as legal folders. In the corner, Whitmore Estate. No sender's name, no message, just the family name, as if that alone dictated the rules of the game. I sat staring at it on my kitchen counter for a few minutes, still holding a lukewarm mug of coffee. My tiny sixth-floor apartment was flooded with morning light, but inside I felt weighed down like a pile of ash. Brandon called just as I ran my thumbnail across the seal. "Did you get the invite?" His voice crackled through the speaker, oddly cheerful. Before I could answer, he continued, "Mom wants everything to be elegant. Dinner's on Saturday at the estate. Don't worry, it's just a few close family members." I forced a smile, looking down at the gold foil invitation lying in the middle of the table. The opening line was bold, cold. "The Whitmore family cordially invites you to the engagement celebration of our son, Brandon Joseph Whitmore, at Whitmore Estate." My name wasn't anywhere, not once, no mention of me, the woman about to become his wife. It didn't feel like an oversight. It felt like a deliberate omission. Brandon kept talking about the wine selection, the chef flying in from Chicago, how his mother was very particular because the local press might cover the event. I nodded along, then hung up after a few brief replies. That evening I sat alone in my quiet kitchen and opened the invitation again. There were no personal touches, no Chloe and Brandon, no building a future together, no photo, no sentiment. It was pure formality, a press release dressed in satin ribbon. I'd met Brandon's mother before. Meredith Whitmore, in her early 60s, platinum hair, the kind of presence that made everyone in the room breathe only when she allowed it. The first time we met, she looked me up and down and asked, "So, where exactly is your family from? The name Faye sounds rather plain, doesn't it?" I remember Brandon gave a half laugh and quickly changed the subject to a new bakery near my place. Not once did he defend me. At the time, I chalked it up to social awkwardness, but staring at that invitation again, I realized the truth was they never actually saw me as part of their family. A close friend once told me, "How they introduce you is how they value you," and now they were valuing me through absence. An invitation without my name was a declaration. I was a supporting character, not worthy of being part of the main picture. I folded the invitation and placed it in a drawer, not because I wanted to keep it, but because I wasn't quite ready to throw it away. It wasn't just a card. It was a warning, a signal I could no longer ignore. Saturday night, I would walk into the Whitmore estate, not as a blushing bride-to-be, but as a woman who had begun to understand that this engagement wasn't just about love. It was a quiet test to see how much I was willing to endure. A light drizzle fell over Charleston just as I stepped out of the sleek black Uber, my floor-length dress skimming the damp stone steps. The Whitmore estate stood before me like a hushed version of the Great Gatsby's mansion. Hedges trimmed with military precision, warm lights casting a glow on towering white columns, and two tuxedoed attendants opening the door with expressionless faces. I took a deep breath and walked in. Brandon stood at the end of the hall, his charcoal suit so pristine it made you hesitate to hug him too tightly. He gave me a brief cheek-to-cheek kiss, then whispered, "You're right on time. Mom'll be pleased." The dining room was larger than my entire apartment. The walls were lined with oil portraits, most of them men. An older man, whom I assumed was one of Brandon's uncles, greeted me with a nod so mild it felt more like he was assessing whether I deserved a handshake. Meredith, Brandon's mother, emerged from behind a crystal vase, the height of a toddler. Dressed in a black gown trimmed with ostrich feathers and triple-stranded pearls, she cast a glance at me that didn't last more than a second before turning to greet another guest. The evening felt like a scripted play where I had been cast without a script. I sat next to Brandon. He didn't hold my hand. He didn't introduce me to anyone. Dinner unfolded in delicate clinks of silverware and conversations about coastal real estate, board seats, and tax-effusive foundations. I smiled politely, nodded occasionally. No one asked me anything, except for an elderly woman with platinum hair who casually inquired whether I'd attended a notable school. After dessert, Meyer lemon cheesecake garnished with dried petals. Meredith stood and tapped her wineglass. The room fell silent, as if someone had announced a curfew. "I hope everyone enjoyed the meal," she said, her tone elegant and just a little cold. "Before we raise a glass to the happy couple, there's a small family tradition we'd like to observe." She turned and pulled a sleek black envelope embossed with the Whitmore crest from a side drawer. She didn't hand it to Brandon. She placed it directly in front of me. "Chloe," she smiled, the kind of smile that meant she believed she'd already won. "Just a little legal formality, in case things don't go as expected. Our family values transparency." I opened the envelope. 6 thick pages printed in black and white, headed Prenuptial Agreement, Whitmore v. Party 2. In the event of divorce, Party 2 shall not receive any assets belonging to Whitmore Holdings. No claims to inheritance, equity, shares, or financial support, even in the case of children. Party 2 agrees to exit the marriage without requesting any financial, material, or legal compensation. I looked at Brandon. He was staring at his half-eaten cheesecake, as if it could swallow the words he couldn't say. I picked up the Mont Blanc pen his mother had placed beside the documents, heavy, cold, engraved with both our names on the silver barrel. "This was Brandon's gift when he arrived," Meredith said sweetly. "It writes so smoothly." Someone at the far end of the table let out a stifled laugh. I heard a few glasses clink, then silence. I didn't lose my temper. I didn't retreat. I looked Meredith in the eye and said, loud enough for even the housekeeper 10 feet away to hear, "You're asking me to sign something that says if your son leaves me, I disappear like I never existed?" Meredith tilted her head, her smile as soft as velvet-wrapped steel. "Chloe, if the love is real, the paper doesn't matter, and if it's not, well, you're not losing anything, are you?" I placed the pen back down. I didn't sign. "I'm not losing anything," I repeated, "but I see a lot of people in this room have already lost something called dignity." No one said a word, not even Brandon. And it wasn't the contract that made me rise from that table. It was that silence. I didn't slam the door, but each step I took across the marble floor echoed like a reckoning in a house that had forgotten how to welcome someone with respect. Rain was falling steadily as I left the Whitmore estate. The umbrella handed to me by the valet now rested quietly in my hand, unused. I let the rain soak through my softly curled hair, trace down my back, and seep into the lace of my dress. The chill of a Charleston night wasn't as biting as the emptiness tightening in my chest. I drove home in silence, no music, no GPS, no call from Brandon. The streets were quiet, yellow lights flickered on the rain-slicked pavement, turning the city into a blurred dream. When I arrived at my apartment, I didn't turn the lights on. I sat in the car for a few more minutes. The engine was off, but my hands remained clenched around the steering wheel. Inside my purse, the Mont Blanc pen still sat. A gift I once thought symbolized a new chapter. Now it felt more like proof of a silence that hurt louder than words. Inside, the scent of lavender essential oil still lingered faintly. I kicked off my shoes, peeled off the damp dress, wrapped myself in a thick sweater, and poured a glass of water. I wasn't thirsty. I just needed something to keep my hands steady. The phone rang. I didn't need to check to know it was Brandon. I let it ring to the 4th time, then silenced it. A few minutes later, 3 firm knocks echoed at my door. I opened it. He stood there, shirt clinging to his skin, tie stuffed awkwardly in his coat pocket. Chloe, just let me explain. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. You sat there, watched your mother slide a contract across the table, watched me open it like it was a verdict. And you didn't say a word. He swallowed. I didn't know she'd do it, at least not during dinner. But you knew she had it prepared, didn't you? He didn't answer. Silence again. This isn't just about a contract, Brandon. This is about how your family sees me, about how you let them treat me without once stepping in. He looked down, gripping his wet hat. They just wanted to be careful. They've been hurt before, lost a lot. I nodded. And I'm supposed to pay for that? The air between us grew thick. He reached out. I stepped back. Tonight made me realize maybe our relationship is the only thing in that house that never got put on the table for negotiation. I closed the door. Not with a slam, not with shouting, just a clean, final motion. Like walking away from a role I had spent 3 years trying too hard to play. I didn't sleep. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up every email from Meredith over the past year. Event invites, notes, links to vendors, shared Google Docs. I wasn't digging out of anger. I read with a cold clarity. I wanted to see how many red flags I had missed, those seemingly harmless comments, the glances that looked through me rather than at me. At 3 a.m., I reopened the wedding planning document Meredith had sent. A note at the bottom of page 3 stopped me cold. Ensure all media content focuses solely on the Whitmore brand. Do not emphasize the bride. I'd been part of their campaign far longer than I realized. As dawn crept in, I called Holly, my best friend in Chicago and a lawyer specializing in prenuptial disputes. She answered on the first ring. Chloe, can you look over a contract for me? A pause. Then, I'm opening my notepad. Send it all. I attached the PDF and the screenshots I'd saved from dinner. 10 minutes later, Holly messaged back. Chloe, this isn't a prenup. It's an eviction notice dressed in legalese. I stared at the screen, too empty to feel anger or heartbreak, just one thought looping over and over. If he really loved me, he wouldn't have sat still. I got up, washed my face, and changed into a soft denim shirt. Today, I wasn't a bride-to-be. Today, I was a woman about to do what none of them saw coming. Rewrite the rules. 2 days after that night, I took the earliest flight to Chicago. Holly met me at the airport with a brief hug and eyes sharp as a blade wrapped in velvet. She said little during the ride. It wasn't until we stepped into her office, a quiet, top-floor space with books lining the walls in soft amber lighting, that she placed a stack of documents, thicker than I expected, in front of me. I spent 2 nights reading every word, Holly said, tapping the upper corner of one page. File creation date 7 months before you and Brandon even met. I frowned. That can't be. We started dating last fall. Exactly. This was drafted in February. I flipped through the pages. The terms mirrored the prenup Meredith had handed me. But the chilling part? The original title didn't include my name. It read, Media Marriage Strategy Draft Tier 2 Candidate. Ollie looked at me, voice even. Chloe, this isn't a standard prenup. It's part of Whitmore Holdings' media strategy documentation. You were in their plan as a soft asset, a tool to freshen up the family's public image. A cold chill ran down my spine. They thought I was a marketing product? Polly didn't answer. Instead, she handed me another packet. Internal emails between the PR team and brand image consultants. One line from the assistant director of communications made my hands tremble. If we can find a woman from a non-wealthy background, well-educated, preferably working-class roots, even better, easy to build a cross-class love story around. Public will eat it up. Schedule screening for candidate Chloe Faye. Ended it. I had thought I entered this relationship through love. Turns out, I had been recruited like they were picking out tiles. As long as I matched the design aesthetic. I looked at Holly. I'm a brand campaign. She nodded without softening the truth. They built a story about Brandon finding real love outside the finance world to soften their image. After the Atlanta hotel acquisition scandal, they needed a narrative shift. Fast. I bit my lip. The puzzle pieces began to snap into place. Meredith asking about my family background. Casual questions like, has anyone in your family ever been on TV? Brandon suggesting we do engagement photos with a magazine cover team. I hadn't seen it. Or maybe I had and chose not to. And Brandon? I asked. Did he know? Holly didn't answer right away. She pushed her laptop toward me. Watch this. On screen was a presentation bearing the Whitmore Holdings logo. Slide 3, Q4, Brand Repositioning Strategy, the Brandon Whitmore Story. Below it, a photo of me. Taken at a product launch I spoke at last year, smiling under soft lights, the background blurred out. The next slide read, Brandon and Chloe's relationship could positively sway public sentiment. Simple, smart, inspiring love story, ideal narrative span, 6 to 12 months, preferably culminating in marriage to complete the visual arc. Reassess engagement afterward for retention or transition. Transition? I didn't cry. What I felt wasn't heartbreak, it was a terrifying clarity. This is a media contract, I murmured. Not officially, Holly said, but calculated enough to call it what it is, a staged storyline they never expected to unravel. I closed the laptop and stood. I'm not the fiancé in a misguided love story. I'm a character in a corporate PR campaign they thought would stay buried. So what now? Holly asked. I looked at her. My eyes were no longer glassy, only sharp-honed steel remained. I won't stay silent, but not in the way they expect. I don't need to scream, I just need the right moment. And the proof. 2 weeks after leaving the Whitmore estate, an unexpected package arrived at my doorstep. A square, light brown box sat neatly outside my apartment, tightly sealed, bound with a thin twine cord. No shipping label, no delivery notice, just a small card tucked into the twine, handwritten in a script I recognized instantly. If you're reading this, it means the time has come. Dad. I froze. My father, Walter Fay, had passed away 6 months ago from heart failure after years of hiding his illness. He was a quiet man, passionate about layout design, a long-time worker in the print and creative industry. He was never the type to express affection with words, but he had always told me one thing. Respect doesn't come from wealth, it comes from knowing who you are and never selling that for cheap. I brought the box inside, shut the door, and opened it with slightly trembling hands. Inside was a black folder, a small USB drive, and a thick envelope sealed with red wax, stamped WF. I opened the envelope first. The letter was typed, but the signature at the end was unmistakably his, familiar to the point of pain. It read, I know you're strong, stronger than your mother, stronger than me, and stronger than anyone who's ever underestimated you. I quietly built a part of my legacy not for myself, but for the day you might walk into a world that refuses to be fair. Enclosed are the documents for a financial account at Wyoming Trust, legally transferred to your name, along with full ownership of all intellectual property from my design firm, Fay Print Solutions. Estimated total value as of now, $29 million. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're not enough. You're not just enough. You're extraordinary. Signed, Walter Fay. I sat in silence, gripping the letter, no tears falling. But my heart was screaming. Inside the folder were the official transfer papers for the bank account, notarized just 3 weeks before he passed. Alongside were patents, packaging designs, trademarks, all listed under a firm I had thought he sold years ago. I plugged the USB into my laptop. It contained detailed financial records, distribution contracts, registered copyrights, all transferred into my name through a holding entity. $29 million. It wasn't just a number. It was undeniable proof that I had never come into this world empty-handed. I just hadn't been allowed to see my own worth through the lens of others. I called Holly. She picked up on the second ring. Chloe, I think you need to come see this, right now. An hour later, she arrived at my apartment with her laptop and a box of pastries from our favorite cafe. She read through every page of the documents in silence, then looked up. Chloe, this isn't just wealth, this is leverage. I nodded. My father didn't just leave me money, he left me a choice. And for people like the Whitmores, Holly said, resting her hand on the thick stack of papers, nothing threatens them more than a woman with power who owes them nothing. I pulled out a photo of my father in his print shop, his work clothes stained with ink, his eyes full of quiet belief. He saw it all coming, Holly, even the betrayal. That night, I didn't pop champagne. I didn't celebrate. I opened my journal, the one I'd kept private since the day I first started dating Brandon, and wrote a single sentence. Walter Fay's daughter never signs under pressure, only on what she chooses. I returned to the Whitmore estate on a Thursday afternoon, the Charleston sky draped in heavy clouds. I wasn't there to apologize. I wasn't there to clear the air. I wore a cream-colored suit, my hair tied up neatly, low heels chosen for stability. In my hand was a slim leather briefcase holding the contract Holly and I had drafted over 2 long nights, vetted by 3 attorneys and an independent financial advisor. The same butler opened the door. A flicker of surprise passed through his eyes before he bowed slightly. Miss Chloe, they're in the sitting room. The room felt like a memorial. Meredith sat on the velvet couch in a slate-gray silk dress, gently swirling her martini. Brandon stood by the window, back turned to me. His father, Douglas, pretended to read a newspaper, but I knew he hadn't turned the page in 10 minutes. Chloe, Meredith said first, her tone as calm as if our last encounter had never happened. You came back after all. I set the briefcase on the table, pulled out the 4-page contract, and placed it in front of her. This is the prenuptial agreement, but it's mine. The room stilled. Brandon turned, disbelief in his eyes. I didn't wait for a reaction. I began, voice steady and clear. This agreement states that all intellectual property and financial assets I hold prior to this marriage remain solely mine. Conversely, any income, assets, or properties acquired during the marriage will be shared equitably based on financial and labor contribution. I looked straight at Meredith. Furthermore, should there be any act of infidelity, media manipulation, or unauthorized commercial use of my name, this agreement automatically voids any access to Whitmore Holdings. Meredith set her glass down. Are you threatening our family? No, I replied calmly. I'm doing what everyone around here pretends not to, protecting myself. Brandon stepped forward. Chloe, this isn't like you. You're blowing things out of proportion. I pulled from my bag the pen my father once used to sign the founding contract of Fay Print Solutions, a silver twist cap pen with my birth year engraved at the top. I'm not blowing things up. I'm cleaning up a mess people here like to call tradition. Douglas folded his paper. This kind of matter should be handled privately, not in the sitting room. Privately? I nodded. Then perhaps your wife shouldn't have presented me a contract over dessert during a family dinner. Meredith opened the folder, scanning the clauses. Her composure slipped ever so slightly. These terms are highly irregular, Chloe. No one in this family has signed anything like this before. Then maybe it's time they did, I said, my voice low but forceful enough to press the room inward. Otherwise, I added, this engagement ends here, right now. Brandon stood frozen. His gray eyes searched mine, but I no longer saw the man who once split sandwiches with me on busy work days. I saw someone who had chosen silence while I was turned into a strategy. Where are you going this far, Chloe? He asked, still confused. I gave him a cold smile. Because if I didn't, you'd be the one signing off on my erasure, while pretending it was love. Meredith leaned back, finally sensing what she hadn't foreseen. I didn't come here to be accepted. I came to define my place, on my own terms. Brandon took the pen. His hand trembled slightly. I didn't back down. I didn't speak another word. He signed. One firm stroke. Blue ink spelling out his name on a document I authored. I slipped the pen back into my bag, folded the contract, and placed it carefully inside. "Thank you for your time," I said, turning to leave. Behind me, Meredith called out, her voice soft for the first time. "Chloe, do you even know what you're doing?" I turned back with a faint smile. For the first time in my life, and with absolute clarity. I left the Whitmore estate that weekend under an overcast Charleston sky, the kind that felt like the city knew a different kind of storm was coming, one made of data, not rain. That night I sat in my small apartment, the cold glow of my laptop screen lighting up the room. Holly sat across from me, arms crossed, eyes locked on the screen. On the table sat 3 half-empty cups of coffee and a thick folder we had spent the past week compiling. Every email, internal document, and a presentation titled Q4 Rebranding Strategy, Whitmore Holdings. I had once believed that walking away quietly would be enough, but I came to understand if I stayed silent, they would use that silence to continue their polished fiction. "You're sure about this?" Holly asked one last time. I nodded. "I don't need them to admit anything, I just need the truth to be seen." I logged into Whistle Drop, a secure document sharing platform for whistleblowers and corporate misconduct. I selected 3 main files. Internal presentation, Chloe Fay as the humanitarian image asset for Whitmore Holdings. Email between Meredith Whitmore and PR team leverage Chloe's story to soften post-Atlanta scandal reputation. Exit strategy memo. If Chloe withdraws, pivot narrative to amicable breakup and let Brandon be the voice. I clicked upload, selected public, then opened a new tab and logged into Twitter. I typed a single sentence. No tags, no names, no hashtags. Sometimes your silence is what convinces them they were right. I'm silent no more. Attached, the document link and a quote from one internal email. If Chloe agrees to stay quiet, we can maintain the image of a compassionate family and redirect media focus. I clicked post. 15 minutes later, my phone started buzzing nonstop. 2 hours later, the hashtag strategic bride began trending. A prominent YouTuber uploaded a breakdown video of the entire slide deck, calling me a textbook example of how the elite manipulate women's identities for PR. One Medium article was shared over 80,000 times in a day. Chloe Fay wasn't the bride, she was their failed brand campaign. 3 days later, 2 major outlets reached out, one from the New York Times, one from Vox. I responded only with a short email. I wasn't the author of their story. I'm just releasing what they tried to bury. The Whitmore family reacted exactly as expected. Whitmore Holdings issued a press statement claiming the materials were taken out of context and misleadingly edited, but it was already too late. Investors started asking questions. One hotel partner pulled out of a Tampa deal. A fashion brand that had partnered with Meredith canceled their campaign, citing misalignment with brand values. Things spiraled further when a former Whitmore PR employee came forward to verify the authenticity of the files. A leaked audio clip featured Meredith herself saying, "I don't need her to be smart, I need her to be quiet and photogenic." One sentence. Enough to dismantle a legacy built over 30 years. Meredith stepped down from the board the following week. Brandon made no public statement, but by midnight, his Instagram account had gone private after comments flooded in. "You call that love? We call it a financial strategy with a diamond ring." As for me, I didn't post anything else. After the first release, I went completely silent. No interviews, no rebuttals, no added commentary. Because I knew, once the truth has a voice, I don't need to speak anymore. That night, I shut off all my devices and stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker. I didn't feel glory, I didn't feel triumph, I felt something quieter and heavier. Not pain, power. They had used me as a tool. Now, I held the switch. And the spotlight was finally shining on the people who had once assumed I'd stay behind the curtain forever. 3 months after I made everything public, my life had completely changed, not with applause or accolades, but with quiet moments full of choice. I moved out of Charleston, leaving behind everything that once made me shrink. My new apartment in Boston sat on the 8th floor, with morning sunlight spilling through the windows, casting a golden glow over sketches I was drafting for my latest project, the Marin Initiative, a foundation named after my grandmother, Marin Fay, a small woman with silver hair pinned neatly and a voice as soft as a late summer breeze. She was a nurse during the war, never loud, but always heard. She once told me there are two kinds of power, one that's handed to you, and one you build yourself. You're the second kind, she told me when I was 14, after I'd been rejected from the debate team for not fitting the right image. If you're passionés, be kind and lay. Become my stewards of the brevity to build. Show me a stage can hold a mirror, my fly, my vision. As the cap sings, are you ready? The Marin Initiative is a fund for women who have been manipulated financially, publicly, reputationally. Women who were told they were too ambitious, too emotional, or not the right fit for a family brand. We don't tell their stories for them, we help them tell their own, legally, clearly, and on their terms. I used part of the inheritance from my father to build the office in Boston's Fort Point district. Once a warehouse, now an open, sunlit space with glass walls, pine tables, and a quote etched onto the front window. You don't need permission, just walk in. Holly became our legal director. She brought on 2 more attorneys and a team of media advisors. We started receiving cases. A single mother in Phoenix pressured into silence for refusing to be a background prop for her company's executive board. A med student in Atlanta threatened with loss of her scholarship unless she signed away her image rights. A professor in Oregon urged to remain anonymous so as not to interfere with donor messaging. Each story was a sharp slice, each file a voice that had been forced to whisper. Now they had a space to be amplified, not to scream, just to be heard. That night I stood alone on our rooftop terrace, a warm cup of tea in my hands, looking out at the glowing city. Boston sparkled like it always had, but I was no longer the same. My phone buzzed. An email from an NGO in Norway. We've been following the Marin Initiative for the past 2 months. We'd love to discuss bringing this model to Europe. When might you be available? I smiled, gently, no rush. Then came another message. The sender, Brandon Whitmore. Just 4 words. Are you okay, Chloe? I looked at it. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel regret. Just peace. I didn't reply. I didn't block him either. Brandon was no longer a presence. He was a shadow, faded in a journey I'd redrawn with my own hand. I set the phone down and turned back inside. Holly was still editing a document. At the far table, our media team was prepping a teaser for our first campaign. Voices are not for sale. The first frame? A woman with her back to the camera, light casting across half her face, her voice steady and clear. I used to be the backdrop of someone else's story. Now I'm the author. I am Chloe Fay. I don't belong to anyone's narrative but my own, and this time I didn't just walk out of the storm. I built shelter for the ones still finding the way. Chloe's story proves that silence isn't always noble. It can be the trap that lets others define you. By stepping out of the acceptable role, she didn't just reclaim her dignity. She cleared a path for those who've been treated as props in someone else's script. In real life, independence doesn't begin when others accept us. It begins the moment we stop asking for permission to exist and start defining ourselves through truth, resolve, and unapologetic clarity. What do you think about Chloe's choice? Would you have done the same in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family, dignity, and freedom.